What's up gamers, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we're going to be discussing Little Nightmares 3. I'm going to start off though before we dive into this by saying this obviously has major spoiler warnings. We will be discussing the ending. So today I want to go over my opinion and rating of the game, and I also want to go over some theories possibly about the game now that we're starting to see more of this game come to light. I'm going to start with my opinion on the game. I thought Little Nightmares 3 was good. I know a lot of people are hating on this game because it's got new developers, and I must admit some parts of the game it is easier to see that maybe it's not the same people as Little Nightmares 1 and 2. So I'm going to start with my pros for this game versus the cons I have. So, starting with pros, I think this game is absolutely stunning. I think the artwork is beautiful, the characters are so well told and so they fit into the world nicely. I also think the enemies of this game fit the Little Nightmares vibe perfectly. The depth of this game as well is stunning when you're standing in like the candy factory or the necropolis, and you can see the world just goes all the way back, especially in the scene with the baby where we see her get chased off by some crows. Obviously we will be discussing what this game has in store for Low and Alone. So I finished this game in about 7 hours, give or take, because I like to look around for Easter eggs and see what links the games together. And as I said, this game is beautifully made and it fits the world nicely. I love how it fits in, and I would say this game has definitely earned its title to be in the Little Nightmares series, whether it's made by Bandai Namco or not. I would say that it definitely is one of my most favourite Little Nightmares games, coming from someone that has played this series since the release date of the first game a couple of years back, and someone that has maybe learned all the theories in those times. I do think this game was hard to read. Like, it was very hard to grasp what was going on and what made this a Little Nightmares game other than the art style. Learning how this possibly would fit into the story, or we know that Low and Alone exist in the necropolis and they exist in this world that maybe Six and Mono also went through, but it's very hard to see where this fits in. We know Mono and Six had their endings, they've been done, and I understand the start for new characters, but maybe it was a bit hard to see how these stories maybe coexist in the same universe. That point aside, going back to one of my original points, the art style is stunning. It looks very realistic, and I know this is a modern game, so it's going to have better graphics than the last two. But I do think most of the time when I was playing this game, I wouldn't have learned any difference between the studios. I only found some things were a bit too hard to do, and the AI that you are playing with just get a bit stuck. And I didn't really see the issue as much in Little Nightmares 2. Going onto the scene right near the ending of the game where you have that main boss fight with the psychiatrist man, I found that very, very hard, especially having to run from one side to the other with only a couple seconds. And I was playing as Alone, so having the AI not use his bow and arrow when he was intended to, it took me about, I'd say 45 minutes to complete this fight. And I've had a lot of people saying the same thing, where if you're playing alone like I was, like you're playing the game alone, it is very hard and you might not be able to get past that point, because I found that part quite overstimulating, being stuck and not being able to complete the boss fight and see what the ending is. Now I did eventually get past this, and going on to the next scene where we see a very similar thing where Low and Alone are hanging off a cliff and one of them is holding on, and it makes us think back to Little Nightmares 2 how Six dropped Mono, but it is very refreshing to see. It's very sad, but it's very refreshing to see a true friendship where these two fell together instead of letting go, even though Alone knew what it meant for her fate, because we have learned after finishing the game what happens to Lo and what happens to Alone. So to mostly sum up my pros of this game, it definitely has the visuals and the graphics are stunning. The story is well told, even if it may be confusing. It is a well told and a well written story. The ending is very gut wrenching once you get attached to these characters, and I did cry at the ending. I would say it is beautifully told of a children's friendship in such a dark and twisted place where they would need each other. The soundtrack was beautiful, it fit really well. The characters were good and they fit the universe, they fit the world, and they did their purpose. And moving on to my cons, as I touched on earlier, I find this game a bit hard to read. As an autistic person myself, and maybe someone that finds it harder to see the deeper side of stories, I would say this game is hard to figure out the timeline of where it may fit. Is it a sequel? Does it happen before Little Nightmares 1? What we've learned so far, I think, is that it's not a prequel, it is a sequel this time, which would mean the storyline would be The Littlest Nightmares, and then Little Nightmares 2, 1, and then 3. And the DLCs would fit in between somewhere. I do think this game is a bit short for the money. I mean, I have the Mirror Edition thanks to my partner, so it was about an £80 game. With the extra bits, so excluding that, it is about a £30-40 game. And I do think, I know all Little Nightmares games are pretty short, but I think for the price of this one, it was a little bit short, especially as most people are finishing this game in 2 to 3 hours when they're not like doing collectibles or Easter eggs. And I think the AI gets a bit broken sometimes, and it is a bit hard to play this game when you're not playing with a friend like I didn't. So maybe next time when I play it with someone, it might be easier, and my review on that might possibly change. Apart from that, I don't really have any cons on this game. I just think it's very Little Nightmares vibe, but I just don't think, other than the gameplay and the characters and the world, I don't really see how it fits into the storyline as of yet. And I will say, the ending was a bit sad, but it was beautifully told. And that's all I have to say about that topic. So I'm going to move on to possibly my theories and theories I have seen online. And my biggest theory that I haven't seen many people talking about, surprisingly, is the carnival leader. I have thought, since I have seen this guy, that he maybe is Roger, the janitor from the first game, or he may be related to or made by a similar person, like the doctor in the second game in hospital, because in the first game we can see Roger has his mask over his face which comes just above his eyes, and then in the second game in the doctor's office we can see the doctor's mask on the wall, which is Roger's face mask. And then moving on to the third game, we see this carnival leader listening to the TV song that Roger listened to in Little Nightmares 1. And then we can see that he later is too wearing the same face mask. The only difference is he has got normal sized limbs and he can see. I do personally think this could be Roger, which again, if it is him, it makes this storyline a bit more confusing, because even in the artwork book that I have, I can see that in this picture he is portrayed to be Roger, especially with the gnomes coming around him like the first game, and the alerting noise when he sees you. It is very similar to Roger's from the first game, but just pitched down a little bit. So me personally, I'm surprised I haven't seen more people talk about this, but I do think this guy that we see could possibly be related to or be Roger himself. And if that's true, I kind of like that, because I think this ties in the game a lot more to the Little Nightmares series and gives it a bit more to hold on to, and you know what I mean, to join in with the other two worlds that we have seen before us. And then the next theory is, I think, the canon one that I have seen everyone talking about, the fact that obviously we know Alone never really existed, and we see her perish before our eyes right at the end of the game, which is very sad. And I think once we start seeing the flashbacks of Lo, we can see that he is a little boy in some sort of children's, maybe asylum or mental asylum, and everything looks to be a bit more normal sized. Like, the bed doesn't look huge, it looks sort of like he should be able to fit into it. And we see him here for the first time without Alone by his side, and eventually we move on to see his drawings of Alone and his teddy, and it starts to maybe put some piece of the puzzle together and be like, where is Alone? Why is she not with him? And as we see more of these flashbacks, more of this story starts to become told. And I think after we see the doll with Alone, having them both in the same room, I think maybe it's a bit confusing until you see the ending. But you can, when we pick up the doll, we can see the circle around it where it changes the world back to how it was. I do think this is nicely told. I think maybe this was the game's way of saying, like, no, possibly is, obviously he's making up Alone, but maybe Alone is the light to his life. She is his friend, she is the light that makes things better to Lo. And when we get to the end and we see that Lo never existed, it becomes clear that she was a doll all this time, and she was made up by Lo's imagination. So she only exists in the necropolis. And I think we know she is sentient, she has thoughts and feelings, because after she goes through the mirror we can see she gets injured, and after that she becomes very resistant and hesitant to keep going through these mirrors. And that kind of tells us that she knows that if she keeps going through these mirrors, she is going to cease to exist. But despite knowing this, she lets Lo try, and she encourages him, and she wants him to go back to the real world and not be stuck in the necropolis. And I think it's very touching when you see the after scene credits where you can see Lo trying to piece back his mirror to get back his friend. And my hopes for these DLCs is that it might put something in place. Maybe Lo might go back for Alone, or maybe something positive will happen, or maybe it will put some bits into place with the other two stories, and we might see how this universe fits together. Overall, I would say this game, I would rate it like a 9 out of 10, give or take. And the graphics, I would say 10 out of 10, characters 10 out of 10, soundtrack 10 out of 10. I would give it all 10s out of 10s, and the only thing I would give it less than a 10, as I've touched upon, is the AI and some of the bugs, because it is a newly released game and these things probably will be patched in the future. It's what you kind of expect for an early release game, like for people that have got it on release date and maybe play it for themselves, and these bugs and stuff will come to light, and I'm sure that the studio will eventually fix these little bugs and it will be a lot smoother experience. I would say what I like about this game a lot is that you can get 2 playthroughs done that will be different technically each time, because you can play as Lo and Alone. So when you replay, you're playing slightly different, and you might see the story from a little bit of a different perspective and see how things feel for Lo, especially as a mentally ill boy who's clearly struggling and makes up a friend because he feels so low in his life. I would say I would recommend people to play this game. Maybe not for full price, because I do think it's a little bit steep for some people who might not be able to afford a 3-4 hour experience. But I would say definitely play this game. I absolutely love this game. I would happily play it again without crying. And I absolutely love the Mirror Edition. I think it's well worth the money when you're buying all the extra bits with it, but it's a bit sad having to wait a year for the DLCs, but obviously they are still being currently developed at this time. So we will have to wait and see how the future continues. I hope you guys enjoyed my first video. Let me know your theories on Nightmares 3 and maybe what your favourite part was, or your pros or your cons, and what you maybe agree with me on. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye gamers.